evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Stroy. I am the Director of Public Engagement in the School of Public Affairs and Administration. I want to welcome you tonight to our post-election conversation. The individuals on this panel tonight, including our awesome moderator, are all SPAA alumni. They have graduated from the School of Public Affairs and Administration, and we're all looking forward to them discussing their career in politics. We hope that everyone is well and safe, and here we are 2 days after Election Day, and we don't have any results. It has been a tumultuous year. It has been an interesting time with the global pandemic as well as the racial reckoning that is going on in the country. So in the School of Public Affairs Administration, we decided to host a series of events around the conversation, The Power of the Vote: Registration, Education, and Awareness. We will continue the series in the spring semester after we see the outcome of the election and how it has impacted not only our students, but other communities as well. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this evening, an awesome woman, awesome person, always willing to give back to the School of Public Affairs, Ms. Margarita Muniz. Margarita is currently the management specialist in the Office of Federal Grants and Programs and Parental Engagement for the Newark Public School District. She has served as the deputy mayor from 2006 to 2014 in the city of Newark under the leadership of current Senator Cory Booker, who was the mayor at the time, and then once Senator Booker left, under the leadership of Louis Quintana. She was a graduate in 2009, completed her master's degree in public administration, a staunch advocate in the city of Newark, educating and enlightening communities, children, families, awesome person, also married to Councilman Carlos Gonzalez. It is my pleasure to introduce Margarita Muniz, our moderator for this evening.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to share my evening with you. Thank you for being here. Each and every one of you are such distinguished panelists. You are so on top of your game, serving the constituents of your communities and the constituents of the state of New Jersey. So I thank you for your service and I thank you for your spirit. Welcome, everyone, and public servants in politics. I'd like to start with a very, very brief presentation. If my panelists will be so kind as to take a minute and just introduce yourself. If we can start with Mrs. Mincelo, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha. I am currently an EMPA student, finishing out my final year at SPAA. I'm also a newly appointed SPAA student ambassador for the inaugural cohort of the program. Previously, I've served in the Office of the Governor as an aide to the Governor for Intergovernmental Affairs at the start of the Murphy administration, worked at the Department of Banking and Insurance, and then moved to the private sector where I'm now working for a PR firm who handles public entity clients doing crisis communications and public relations. And I also serve on the executive board of the Monmouth County Young Democrats.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this evening. Mr. Williams, will you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gary Williams. I currently serve as a senior legislative aide to Governor Murphy. Part of my responsibilities are to craft and to articulate the governor's as well as the administration's legislative priorities to external stakeholders, which include members of the legislature, community advocates, and as well as trade associations and business groups. Prior to that, I served as a project specialist in U.S. Senator Cory Booker's office. And prior to that, I was a legislative aide to then Speaker Oliver. I'm a SPAA graduate from 2012, proud double Rutgers alum. And
All right.
thank you. And it's really an honor for me to be here with you all.
Thank you for joining us. That's a lot of experience. We're going to move on with Mr. Stevens.
Yes, good evening all. So my name is Ricky Stevens. I am currently in the MPA program as well. I'm actually in my last semester, which has been an awesome experience. So in my work capacity, I actually serve in a similar role to Gary as a legislative director, except I actually work for a specific member of the General Assembly. So I handle all of his public policy, make sure that he's up to speed with everything. But I also work with external stakeholders and businesses like that to make sure that their concerns are heard on specific policy issues in which we're working with. And I actually started out as an intern in 2018, moved on to a full-time legislative aide, and worked my way into the position that I am now. So just taking it one day at a time and using actually my coursework through the MPA program and transitioning that into, the everyday office experience and just trying to be better and more ingrained in Union County every day.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you so much. Councilwoman Davis, thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening. I am Councilwoman Ashley Davis. I represent the 1st Ward in the city of Plainfield, New Jersey. And I am a 2015 graduate of SPAA. I also work for the state of New Jersey in my full-time capacity, and I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you once again. So we're going to move right on. I have a question for Ricky Stevens. I understand that you played ball at Rutgers University. Is that correct?
So that is true. So I actually did 2 years at Brookdale Community College. And it's funny that you brought that up because when I got to Rutgers, I had no idea what I wanted to do but play ball. So I did that for 2 years. My coach kind of pointed me in the direction of public administration. I knew I was always someone who wanted to help people. So I honestly say that it was meant to be. Because once I got into that program, the coach actually connected me with Dean Stroy, and the rest was history. I ended up taking a public administration full-time with political science, doing a couple of internship opportunities. And once I got that momentum rolling, I just kind of, every day just try to get better and better at it. And again, take the classwork and put it into those internship opportunities and make the most of those experiences. And honestly, like that formula has led me to get where I am today.
Thank you. And I asked you that question because I understand that basketball almost led you to public service, which is so indicative of always being on point, always being on top of your game, because you don't know where life is going to take you. But I'd like to ask Councilwoman Davis the question. I understand that you've done a lot of volunteerism as you were younger with your Delta sisters. So talk to me a little bit about that, and how did that take you to then run to be an elected official?
Yes, so my life is kind of centered around volunteerism. I started very young as a Girl Scout in the city of Plainfield. And then as I went through in undergrad, I worked with Common Cause North Carolina to register college-age students to vote. And then when I came back to Plainfield, I went back to the Girl Scouts as a co-troop leader, as a member of Delta Sigma Theta. We're a public service organization, and I work on the chapter's social action committee. So a lot of the service I do is centered around civic engagement,
Yes.
Scholarship, and things of that nature. I also do a lot of service in my church through our scholarship ministry and things of that nature. So public service has kind of always been ingrained in me. And one of the big things the Girl Scout talks about is making the world a better place, or leaving it better than how you found it. And that is what really drives me when I think about public service, is about leaving my community better than when I found it.
So would you say that there are special courses or maybe very distinctive courses within SPAA that you would highly recommend to a young student that may not be looking at that course yet?
So ethics is a really good course in SPAA,
Absolutely.
in the public service, especially in the public sector, where sometimes ethics gets real dicey, or people believe or have this perception that people who are in the public service sector, especially politicians, are somehow unethical. So ethics is a really good course Research methods is also a really good course because it allows you to really dissect information. And we know that sometimes, depending on what channel you watch, it kind of skews which way things are perceived. But taking research methods allows you to really see that correlation is not always causation.
I so agree with you, especially with the ethics course. I actually taught ethics at the undergraduate level. But if you don't understand ethics and put yourself in check, there's a lot of things that can happen. So thank you so much. Mr. Williams, would you say that, given your experiences, your resume, how important is it for ethics to play in not only your personal character, but in your interactions with other individuals?
Ethics is a huge key. For me, you kind of have to have a solid ethical grounds when you're engaging with members, because I'm really big on decorum and process. And if you don't have a process and play, things can become disjointed and organized. And from an ethical lens, you always want to make sure that you're walking a tightrope.
Exactly. And being the example for your staffers as well, and constantly monitoring and making changes where changes need to be made, whether it's training or just the culture of the office. But I'd like to move on to Mrs. Mincelo. Your resume is extensive. It's beautiful. You've worked in external relations. You worked in intergovernmental relations. I understand you're a mom of 4 children. Why SPAA? Aren't you busy enough?
Yes. But you know what? This was for me. Like you said, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids of my own. I have 2 stepkids.
Okay.
It's chaotic a lot of the time, especially given the COVID environment that we're in right now. But you know what? I think that it is important as working mothers that we continue to better ourselves. I chose SPAA because I am a working mother, and the EMPA program that I'm a part of is an online program where I could work towards my degree in 2 years at my own on my own time frame. That was key for me being able to achieve this degree. I can do it after my kids go to bed. I can do it when they have a break from school. You know, it's been important for me to have that aspect, and SPAA has been able to give that to me.
That's beautiful, especially since it's for you. I actually did my my MPA while I was the deputy mayor, and had my daughter and 2 children living in the house. So, and still being the wife and still being in the kitchen about 6 whenever I could. So I fully understand. I congratulate for that self-care.
Yeah.
Mr. Williams, I wanted to get back to you on a question. You've worked at the federal level, you've worked at the state level, you've worked at the local level. When did you know that this is what you wanted to do? Like, when did you get into politics?
You know, honestly, I had the pleasure of being, or the benefit of being exposed to this realm at a really early age. So just for full transparency, this person in my right corner, Dr. Hill, is my mom. So having exposure at a really early age really ingrained in me what it meant to serve your public. I mean, in high school, I campaigned for Senator Rice, who I'm working with today, and who was like a godfather to me, who's someone who's really put me under their wing. Then having interned for then Lieutenant Governor Oliver, it really put me in a position to learn, to really observe, to understand how these policies really have a direct impact on people's lives. And kind of like Ricky, once you see that, you get bit by that bug, you're like, you say to yourself, this is where I want to be. I want to be an agent of change where I can help put forth these policies that benefit my community.
Outstanding. And we thank you for that. We thank you for that. Ricky, I wanted to get back to you. You're young, you're minority, you're in the right place. What did SPAA help you with to be the person you are today? Not the degree, but the culture of the school and the staff and the administration. How did they prepare you to be the man that you are today in the capacity that you're serving?
That's a really good question. And for me, like I always thought that SPA helped me find my purpose. I've always been someone who cared about other people, and I get gratification from being able to assist other people. Like I said before, when I got to Rutgers, I had no idea what it is that I wanted to do. So meeting Dean Stroy and have a conversation with her about what SPA meant and, how I would be able to assist others, in this field. And then eventually partnering with Dr. Hill, who is like a second mother to me and a huge role model. She's been instrumental in kind of helping me navigate through the field. And then now we have Dean Mincelo. Just the staff in general at SPA, they've been very helpful and very self-serving. So I've been blessed with a lot of individuals within the department who have assisted me along my trajectory. And they've been really good at shepherding me towards the things that I wanted to do and not necessarily kind of forcing things on me. And they've been very good at being, vital resources upon my, career trajectory. So they kind of just put me out there on my own. Once I found out that I want to do some internship opportunities, they provided me with some really good ones that helped me learn. My first internship opportunity was with Congressman Payne, which is right up the road from the university. And then I actually met Gary thereafter while he was working for Senator Brooker. I did an internship there. So the SPA department, and not to say that others aren't, but I have had experiences with other departments that haven't been as receptive to their students. I think that was huge and helped me figure out, how I would be able to serve people, which is something that I love to do. And even Dr. Hill was the reason where I am today. She was the one who connected me through the Legislative Black Caucus Internship Foundation program. And that's how I got my into the legislature. And I took that opportunity and with her guidance and leadership, trying to mold me into the best person that I can be for that role. And I love it. And I'm just trying to take it every day and learn as much as possible and just kind of be a pillar in, the community that I have an opportunity to work in and just learn and grow every day.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear that because I believe that a lot of folks, including myself, agree with you wholeheartedly. I personally love Dr. Hill. She's been my girl since decades now, not years, decades. And Stroy, she can commit me to do something without even asking me because that's how she's got it. But they've earned it. So we appreciate that. They've earned it. They've showed us the good love, the tough love, and they've always stood by our side to make sure that we step out a better person than when we came in. Absolutely. So we thank them for that. And thank you, Mr. Stevens. Councilwoman, I have a question. Now, obviously, as a deputy mayor for 8 years in the city of Newark with the great Senator Cory Booker, as the wife of a phenomenal human being who happens to be the councilman here in the city of Newark, I see firsthand on a daily basis what this madness that we are living in, how it affects me, my family, my community. You are not only the council person, but you're also the chair of the Health and Social Service Committee. How has your position changed since March with COVID-19?
So it has changed a lot. The biggest change is not being able to interact with the public as much as I used to. And I know we kind of joked about it before we really got on about how the last major event before the shutdown seemed like so long ago. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's really hard, especially when you're used to connecting with people face to face, or you're used to running into people and them telling you what their concerns might be, to not be able to do that. Or it's also difficult when a city like Plainfield is experiencing such high COVID numbers, relatively similar to places like Newark, and just trying to figure out how to really get a handle on that and how to really just lead the community without scaring them. And in March, that was really the most important part of what I was doing, was putting out videos on Instagram and Facebook. So reaching people where they were, reaching people who are closer to my age, who are more on more on Instagram, like, hey, listen, COVID is a thing. We can't be out here throwing parties, really just reaching people where they are. And that's been my motto since the beginning, but it was kind of harder with COVID happening because now you have to reach them virtually. And it's easy in today's society to just kind of swipe through or keep scrolling and just making sure that your message is heard and effective. And then, so when all of this started, we thought, oh, it's only going to be 2 weeks, maybe a month. And then, so that kind of just stopped the pace. And then once we realized this is going to last a little longer, it's like, okay, well, now how do you transition effectively to continue the work that still needs to be done? Because even in COVID, people are still food insecure, right? They're still unsure about housing. They're still dealing with those problems that they had pre-COVID. So how do you manage all of that while also dealing with the pandemic?
Exactly, exactly. Every day is a different day. Every day is a new challenge. Every day is a new fear for our community, whether it's housing, whether it's food insecurity, or just basic health. So thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you. Mrs. Mincelo, question for you. I don't think that every politician or every political figure or every legislative aide has people skills. I also don't think that every mayor has a talent to create partnerships that will then make for a better city. But I do know that in your work in external affairs and public relations, you obviously have mastered that. How do you use those talents to become a better leader and a better representative for the people that you're serving?
Sure. As you said, I've done a lot of work in different industries, working in external affairs and business development type work. I think, especially in government, but I think in many industries, it's all about your network. It's all about your network. And I think constantly talking to people, whether you're an elected official or just working in government in some administrative capacity, the best thing you can do is talk to people, hear their stories, hear their concerns, hear their wants and their needs. And, that's the best thing that you can do. So is constantly talking and listening to people. So that's what I've tried to do throughout my time and in all of my positions, especially my time in the governor's office. What was interesting about that is I had a range of 4 counties, from Ocean County, the reddest of red counties, all the way up to Union County. And it was interesting to hear the different concerns from the different municipalities. It made me learn a lot, because the concerns of the city of Plainfield are not the concerns of Brick Township or Woodbridge. So it gave me a lot of understanding about the different issues that come about for different cities, municipalities, and counties.
Excellent, excellent. So true. And I love that skill set, because even if you're not in politics, so for instance, I'm in Newark Public Schools now, the fact that there is a network, the fact that you know how to create partnerships and nurture them can bring so many resources to the organization that you're working with. In Newark Public Schools, we have hundreds of partnerships, and all for the goodness of the children. So thank you again. Mr. Williams, I have a question. You've, again, as I said earlier, you've worked at the federal level, at the state level, you've been involved with public policy for a long time. You have an outstanding resume. What is it that we, Mr. Williams, Ms. Muniz, Mrs. Mincelo, what is it that we as alum can do to better serve our current students? How do we engage them in public relations? How do we engage them in politics to become the leaders that we need in America?
Absolutely. I mean, engaging that next generation is so critical to moving the needle or moving the ball forward. I mean, this generation has the benefit of having information at the tips of their hands through their phones and social media. So I think utilizing that and harnessing that to its fullest potential is definitely one way. But I do know that with COVID happening, probably some courses are probably going to have to change, right, to be more COVID centric and kind of really deal with the fallout of this. I mean, like courses that speak to health inequities and how this pandemic has just exacerbated those gaps that have been there historically, but just given how the pandemic and the virus has had a disproportionate impact on communities of color, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a need to look at that and how to better those policies, especially around Black and Brown communities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Stevens, you're young. You went from being a volunteer to a full-time staffer, I understand. Mm-hmm. How would you motivate our young ones?
I think it's really important to kind of get them into the political process at an earlier age. And this is just from my experiences, like me now being back into my community back home where I grew up. It's kind of tough having conversations with individuals about it just because they don't have the basic understanding of, basic government. But for me, I always had somewhat of an interest in this at an earlier age, and that kind of helped me, understand where we are today, as these things arise. I think where we are in this country today, we have the attention of a lot of young voters. I think people are now seeing how important it is to vote and kind of get out there, but they're just not familiar with the process. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways to reach out to them, because I don't think it's a matter of them not wanting the information anymore. I think we just have to figure out some sort of nuanced ways to get them to learn about the political process, because they only know, for the most part, they may just know things at the federal level, but they don't know what's going on at the state or the local level or how they can get involved. So I think we as younger people need to go back in the communities and have those conversations, because I'm realizing now that they do want to have these conversations, but they just don't know who they can have those conversations with.
Mhm.
So when I'm back in my community, whether it's at the basketball court or, just at a regular hangout, they're having these conversations with me. They actually want to talk to me about it just because they know what I'm doing in my everyday capacity. So I think we got to get back out there, have those conversations with them and let them know, we're here to guide you through that way as well. But we do need to be strategic in how we get to those people. But I know that they're out there. But myself and, us as a collective, we have to be willing to have those conversations and bring them in. Because I assure you that there are people out there that may not know about the political process, but they're definitely interested, especially with what's going on in the country today.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that situations like what's happening right now and having this recorded and keeping it in archives where students can go to it as a resource, hopefully seeing the young faces, the young people, and the success stories that they're hearing about today, hopefully this too will engage them or at least make them more interesting in politics. And then once they start volunteering, they can get into it as all of you have done. So, Councilwoman, and I love saying Councilwoman, you've had boots on the ground for a long time. You've been volunteering. Volunteerism is in your genes. It's in your DNA. How would you motivate our students here at SPAA to be involved in public sector and politics in particular?
I think one way to motivate the SPA students is just showing them the power of the SPA network, right? So before we even got on here live, well, recorded, we were all talking about how we all have a connection to each other and how small the SPA world is, right? So I think going back, right, especially with Dean Stroy, now that she knows she can get in contact with all of us, I feel like it's going to be a thing, right, where we come back to SPA when we have the opportunity to meet in person and kind of just talk about the power of going to SPA, right? The power of this degree that you have from SPA. Not only do you have this degree that'll put you in rooms, you now have a network. And when people, like when I talk to people and they're like, oh, you went to SPA? Oh, I went to SPA too. And it brings a different level of connection, and that helps because we know that sometimes it's not all about what you know, but who you know, right? And those connections and that networking that you get that Samantha was talking about is super important. And coming to SPA, that wasn't a skill set that I really had or I utilized in undergrad, but coming into SPA, that was something that I was able to really cultivate and hold on to. And I've made like a lot of connections since being in SPA.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you referred to Samantha because the whole networking piece that she was talking about earlier is so important. And Samantha, I have a question for you, which is, where did you learn to the external relations piece and where did you learn the public relations piece? It wasn't in school, I'm sure.
No, they don't teach you that, unfortunately. It should be a course for politics. But interestingly, I went to school for my undergrad for broadcasting. I actually worked at CNN right out of college because I thought my interest in politics was going to manifest in a journalistic fashion, wanting to report on the news. Instead, I wound up getting a job working at an insurance brokerage firm that did health insurance benefits for public entity clients. That was really my first foray into the political world, and attending political fundraisers and going to different events and following certain candidates. And it really gave me an opportunity to kind of cut my teeth in the world that I am. And again, it was all about your network. You have to build relationships, and you have to know people, and you have to make sure that you're following the right candidates. And like you said, the network is just so important. But as far as politics too, young people need to get involved in organizations to start building their network. Their local partisan organizations like the Young Democrats or the Young Republicans, start joining those organizations like Ready to Run or Emerge, New Leaders Council, where they can really build their network. So when they get into these positions of power, they can help their organizations.
I'm so glad you mentioned not only the network and peace, but being involved with organizations. I've been with Ready to Run for years, and one of my greatest and most influential networks is that group, the group of women that go to Ready to Run, and you meet year after year. And I'm sure you know about Rising Stars, and you know about Run Sister Run. So that's so important. Eagleton Institute is just doing a phenomenal job in the state. Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, how is it working for Senator Cory Booker? And how did that help you take the next step?
I cannot honestly say that working for Senator Booker in that office was one of the most fulfilling positions from a multitude of reasons. That was my first job going from state to federal. So just getting that 100,000-foot view of how the federal landscape really impacts state-centric policies, and even down to a county and local perspective as well. In that role, I had the ability to really be the senator's eyes and his ears in the state as they're in DC, because prior to that, I had no idea how much time they spent in DC. So I had the opportunity to be in meetings with college presidents, CEOs of businesses, labor leaders. And for me, I was just soaking it all in, like really just taking everything in, really trying to grab the experience and really grow and learn how to navigate these new waters. Because to Samantha's point, your network is really your net worth, and building relationships with these folks across this table is extremely key and valuable, because you never know how that's going to transition or follow you to your next role, which it has done for me in the governor's office. So those years, I think, really helped me grow both professionally and personally.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Mr. Stevens, in your capacity, I know that you interact with all kinds of sectors and constituents and affinity groups. How does the faith-based leadership work hand in hand with politics? What is that relationship looking like in the different cities throughout the state?
So in terms of where I represent, so we're in the 20th district, so we represent Elizabeth, Hillside, Union, and Roselle. So I guess I could speak more to Elizabeth, but there is a huge correlation and overlap between faith-based and policies. Whenever there are we'll take what's going on now in New Jersey. We know that the whole marijuana thing was passed the other day. Even before we got to this point, we've had faith-based leaders at the table, to have conversations about how this is going to impact them and their communities, because, they also serve as another set of eyes and ears that we may not, have access to. And as their pillars in their communities, having their insight and their input on essential policy decisions is very important. And it's something that you don't really realize until you're actually there and have a seat at the table and see, where that correlation exists. But it's very important, not even just in Elizabeth, in each municipality. Faith-based leadership is huge. In Roselle, one of the bigger churches that we have, they just celebrated 130 years. That's a long time to be in the community. So, they have, long-standing members, and they have a lot of influence in the community as well. So having those guys as partnerships and, taking their opinions and their ideas and crafting them into legislation and making sure that they have a seat at the table it's very important. And that's something that we always make sure that we're doing when essential policy conversations are being had.
Absolutely. Having a seat at the table, knowing that they represent hundreds, sometimes thousands of individuals, and listening attentively. Absolutely, that is what will not only allow us to have a good relationship, but a trusting relationship. I'd like to ask the same question to our Councilwoman Davis, but I also want you to, if you would, how do we work with faith-based leaders during a campaign as well? Because now we're at two different sides, right?
Right. So during campaign season, it's a very precarious season, right? So you want to hit as many faith-based institutions as you can, just a way to get your face out there and get your name out there, because that's an easy way to let people know who you are if they don't already know who you are. But then it gets a little dicey if you only come once every 4 years. And I know for me, it was a struggle because I already had a church that I went to. And it was like and I already had commitments at that church, like things I had to do on Sundays. And it was like every Sunday I was missing my church to then go to another church. And it was like, they understood like, yeah, you got to do this political side. But then also it's like but it also gives you a different level of credibility, right? Because people knew when I went to visit their churches, like, oh, she goes to that church over there and she's missing that. And it kind of made it easier to engage the faith-based leaders when you can say, hey, do you know my pastor? Or hey, I go to this church over here, right? They don't just think, because once again, there's this perception that elected officials are somehow shisty, right? Or they're not to be trusted. And that it's like, oh, okay, well, no, we could trust her a little bit. She knows a little bit about church. She knows, and back to Mary's point, right? Protocol and decorum. Right. So she knows protocol and decorum when she comes into the church. She's dressed what we deem as appropriate here. She knows when to stand up, when to sit down. Right. She knows the culture of the church. And that's important to go back to Ricky's point of when you want them to be your eyes and ears and you want to know what's going on in the community, they can trust you and they're willing to tell you, like, this is what we want to do. And with those faith-based partnerships, like, for example, we were able to bring COVID testing to the churches. That kind of, really helped people in the community get tested for COVID who didn't necessarily want to go to Keene or they didn't want to go to some of the other testing sites. Being at the church allowed them a different level of safety and comfort.
The relationship. Thank you. Mrs. Mincelo, when you were at the governor's office doing interdepartmental, did you have an office of faith-based? Or did you work with that community, with the community throughout the state?
Sure, yeah, we had somebody who handled faith-based communities. Our public engagement director worked along with our department. We handled intergovernmental affairs. But our public engagement department certainly handled faith-based communities and making sure that we were engaging them. I mean, that's the best way to reach large handfuls of people at a time. And people feel very comfortable in their places of worship. Like Councilwoman Davis said, that was the best place to meet them where they're at, right? For COVID testing, that's where they feel comfortable. That's their community. So I think it's very important that we engage those communities.
Thank you. I went to the not National League of Cities, League of Municipalities 2 years ago. And one of the seminars, one of the workshops was on the power of the Black church. I says, oh, I love church. I got to go to that workshop. I go into the workshop. All the panelists were from Newark. It's like, wow, I'm home. This is phenomenal. And there is power in the church, regardless of the church. I happen to be a charismatic Catholic, and the church that I go to isn't that charismatic. So I tend to bounce from one church to another. Like, we break tambourines in my house. It's so cool. So I understand not only the power of the pastor or the minister or the priest, but the influence, as Ricky said earlier, the influence over his flock. So I think it's very important, especially when you can go back to that priest or go back to that minister or back to the pastor and bring them to the table on issues that affect all of their constituents. So I really wanted to hear from you, but more importantly, I would like for our students to hear how every constituent group is so important to every candidate and to every leader within the state of New Jersey. With that, Mr. Stevens, can you tell me a little bit about what you do on a daily basis and who are your maybe most significant partners in doing the work for your legislative aid position?
Yeah. So with the whole COVID thing, the landscape of my daily activities has drastically shifted.
Yeah.
A lot of what I do on a daily basis now is assist our constituent services director with individuals who need help with unemployment. It's been a struggle for a lot of people to get through to the Department of Labor, which is quite understandable just because the amount of people who need assistance, we're not sure if the Department of Labor has enough manpower. So we do what we can on our end to try to assist them as best as we can. But still working remotely, there are individuals who may come in and need assistance with housing, or things of that nature. Obviously, the legislature is still going on. We're meeting remotely as opposed to down in Trenton with our regular sessions. So a lot of the voting sessions have been more predicated towards emergency situations, not our daily policy conversations. So it's kind of slowed up a little bit, but it's allowed us to actually focus on the people within our communities and making sure that they have what they need through the pandemic. But we're still working hard every day, making sure that people have what they need. We're still working on policy. As I mentioned earlier, my boss is doing a lot with decriminalization, with the social justice aspect of the marijuana legalization. So we're still trying to make New Jersey a better place and focusing on the policy issues at hand. But we're just kind of taking a step back and doing it remotely as opposed to actually being in the office and being more hands-on with our constituents.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you find that you mentioned unemployment? Do you find other challenges such as food insecurity?
Absolutely. But I would say we don't really hear about that as much just because if your issue is with food, at the end of the day, you're getting your food mostly from your compensation. So they may just address it to us as them not being able to get what they're owed through unemployment as opposed to, listening as a food insecurity. But I've had conversations with individuals who have mentioned having issues with that. And we may send them over to Proceeds or other organizations within our network to get them some assistance with that. But not as much, but we do hear about food insecurities in Union County.
But I do appreciate that you refer them because I find that here in the city of Newark, the food insecurity issue or challenge is being best addressed by the local elected officials and local establishments and nonprofits. Councilwoman Davis, would you like to chime in on that?
Yes, I think it kind of goes back to our partnership with faith-based organizations. So when we saw food insecurity was a problem pre-COVID. And so it just really was exacerbated with COVID. So luckily, we were fortunate enough in Plainfield that we had a lot of faith-based and nonprofit organizations who addressed that issue and already had food pantries set up. And so we worked with them to really get the information out about when those pantries were available and how people could get in contact with them. And also, we've had a great partnership with the County of Union, who has done food pickups and drive up as well as walk up, because we know that if you only simply do drive up food pickups, it helps to promote inequality for people who don't have cars.
Exactly.
And so the county has been a great partner. Locally, we have an anti-poverty agency that works to really address these issues. But that has been a concern of the community that has been exacerbated by COVID. One of the other great things that we're doing in the city of Plainfield this summer, we had the Summer Food Nutrition Program, which is a state program that we run every year. And this year we were able to have the meals be grab and go meals. And so that really helped because we know in the summertime is when a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people were unsure about what was going on with their jobs, and just making sure that their children had food really took a lot of the pressure off of parents. So that was another great thing we did locally to address food insecurity.
Well, once again, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you. And I believe there's a couple of questions in the chat, if we can address the questions.
So, Dean Minifield, would you like me to read your question or would you like to speak it into the space?
I'm sorry, either one's fine with me.
You go.
Okay, so one thing I've noticed in the last few weeks is we have what I would consider very, very valuable webinars, and this one is certainly no exception whatsoever. I remember in 1991 going to a meeting at the state capitol in Mississippi. I was the only student in the room. And there was an announcement that went out to all the MPA students that, hey, we're going to have a meeting. If anyone would like to go, please join us. So I went. And very similar to the way things are now, all students have to do an internship. And when I tell you I had the whole room to choose internships, and then everybody got paid to do an internship. So I got an internship with the state of Mississippi in the evaluation peer committee. And it was a phenomenal experience. So I'm not sure if Ashley or Kanisha or Leslie are students, but I say all this to say, we're not getting students involved in these sort of rich activities the way that I'd like to. It's just, I'm dumbfounded to say the least, because every last one of you, in my opinion, to Ashley's point, is an asset. Y'all have talked about building networks. This is a great opportunity to build a network by just simply asking a question and getting your name out there. And I mean, if I were a student, I would be so bold as to say, hey, I'm really interested in X and you're doing this. Can I get your contact information? All you can say is no. But if you're not here, that option is not even available. Given what we know about high unemployment and how hard it is to get a job these days, I'm having a real culture shock in terms of how do we get students involved? Because trust me, when they want a job, they let everyone know. But we can't get them involved in activities like this so that it's easier. So my question, I'm sorry I took the long road, is how do we get students to recognize that these sort of activities are very, very valuable for them? There's benefits for them. How do we do that?
Anyone?
I think that part of what you're doing as a department of getting student ambassadors involved and kind of putting out the word to their networks, I think is going to be helpful. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still in a weird space. I think Director Stroy was absolutely right when you said people are Zoom fatigued. At the end of a 9 to 5 workday, do people want to hop on another Zoom call to talk business? I don't really know that they do at this point, unfortunately. But I 100% agree with you that we need to be taking, these opportunities to expand our network. And, all these students, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You know what I mean? Like you said during our last town hall, Dean, that you offer people to go out to lunch and talk. And when people rarely take you up on that. That's kind of shocking to me. That people don't take you up on that opportunity, because it's you provide a real benefit, just your knowledge and your network. So I think that we need to be doing more within the school to be able to use our students to reach out to other students and get them engaged.
Anyone else?
Sure, if I could just chime in really, really briefly. I think that's a great point, Samantha, but I would also say leverage your alumni network. I mean, myself, however I can be helpful to spread that message of how valuable this program is, how to be more hands-on, how to help connect that next person to that opportunity. However I can be in any capacity, I definitely want to be a part of that. And just knowing how important those connections are, that connective tissue like really keeps us all connected. I mean, it's for example, like Ricky was an intern in Senator Booker's office. Now I'm working with him in his capacity as legislative director with his member on advancing legislation to impact our state in a positive way. So it's so interconnected, and if any way I can be helpful to be someone to tap into that network and help that be a part of that alumni network, I'm totally on board for that.
That was a great question to start with, and the feedback and the comments were outstanding. I would say that one of the things that I did when I was teaching at Rutgers is I always asked for presentations. The reason I asked for presentations is not because I wanted to assess the students' knowledge of the material, but I wanted students to get comfortable with presenting. Between networking and presentation skills, that's a course in itself. And I know that Dean Stroy has the resources she needs in each and every one of us to assist in filling up that curriculum. So I am so glad you asked that question. To all of our students that are on the call, on the Zoom, presentation skills are very, very important, very important. The networking that we've heard throughout the last hour and presentation skills, but more importantly, as Mr. Charles said, just ask. Can I get your card? Can I get your email address? I have a question relevant to internships. Can I connect with you on that? Just ask the question. All they can say is no. Thank you. Dean Stroy, do we have another question? We have 3 minutes before our hard stop.
This question is actually for Ricky, as I was listening to him talking about engaging the next generation at a younger age. Where do you think we need to kind of begin? Elementary, middle, high school? Just where should those conversations begin? And please know that this panel is amazing, and I will be tagging you for something in the future. Just need you to know that. But is that the opportunity to where we can possibly leverage our resources? There are a number of pre-college programs at Rutgers University, Newark, that we can possibly tap into. So how early should we begin?
So if it were up to me, I think that students should be learning as early as 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I'm not taking anything away from prior history. I think U.S. history is important, and I think we should still, have classes that teach those things. But I think civic engagement is equally, if not more important, because it's going to help those children as they grow up to become more productive citizens and have a better basic understanding of how government works and how they can be productive in their communities once they get themselves out there. And I think that would be a good opportunity to kind of bridge those students to, programs like the SPAA department. And they'll already know what they can do, what roles that they can serve in to be able to be a servant to their communities. My mother works for the Department of Education, and I understand how difficult it is to fit, additional subjects or information into, the kids' already packed, day. But I do think that there needs to be some sort of civic engagement within, even if it's just in high school between your 9 to 12. There needs to be some conversations had about basic form of government and how it works, because that's vital information. And if we want people to be productive citizens, learning how the government works and what you can do to be productive in your community is very important. But for me, I would say you should start in 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Once the kid is really, old enough to really understand. And these kids today are smart. Now that they have all these tablets and things, I've seen 2- and 3-year-old kids do things that I didn't think I was doing when I was that age. So they're more than capable of handling that information and processing it. But I think we need to introduce it to them in that grade school and then just kind of push that on them as they move forward. So once they get to the college level, they already are aware of what it means to vote, what it means to participate, the difference between the local, state, and federal level of government and how policy is implemented and impacted their communities as they move forward.
I just want to add to that. I think that we can start it even earlier, right? Because we know all politics is local. And one of the things I did with the Girl Scouts is they have a government badge. So being the resident elected official for the troop, we kind of talk through the girls with government and policies and laws. And one good exercise I did with them is if you can think of a law, right, what would you make a law right now? And so the troop ranged in age from about 7 to about 14. So the 11 and 12-year-olds was like, I would make a law where there's no homework. The 14-year-olds, they came up with a different law, but we had one 7-year-old and she said, I will make a law where there's no showers. And all of the girls in the troop looked at her like,
There's no what?
No showers.
Showers. Okay.
So all of the girls in the troop looked at her like, no, that is not it. We need to be taking showers. And I said to them, I said, hold on. I said, but sometimes your age dictates your perspective, right? So she's 7, right? She hasn't been through puberty yet. Her not taking a shower, not really bothering her. I said, but you all who have been through puberty, what happens if you don't take a shower? They said, oh, we smell bad. I said, but you see how your perspective, because of your experiences, changed the way you thought about something? I said, that's what happens even when you get older and you think about laws, right? Things like marijuana legislation, right? People who are around my age are like, I don't really see the big deal, right? I think it should be passed. While older people are like, oh no, that is not okay. It's been illegal. As long as I know, it needs to stay illegal, right? So your age and your experiences kind of changes that. And that's an easy way. We can always break it down for younger people to understand. I think another way is through Career Day. So as the councilwoman, I do a lot of career days, Read Across Americas, a lot of things like that. And I remember going into one classroom and they were like, we're 8, why can't we vote? And I said to them, well, if I told you if you vote for me, I'll give you free candy, would you vote for me? The whole class hands went up. So I said, okay, but what are the consequences of you eating a lot of candy? So then they began to think about that, right? So I think really it's about meeting people where they are. And if you break it down to a level that children can understand, then they'll gravitate to it. But also representation matters. So when they see people that look like us, that's not too far from their age, right? Then they're like, oh, I didn't know that was a career, or I had never thought of that. And it just kind of allows them to see what the possibilities and potential is for them.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank everyone on this panel this evening. Thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you, to get to know you. I just may be calling you for something. So thank you, the network and the partnerships, the wisdom that you are pouring into young people's lives. We so appreciate you. Dean Stroy, would you like to close this out?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough. I'm actually really excited to when our communications edits this video to make sure that we share it amongst our network. But as I close out, I'm going to close out with 2 things. On beginning November 9th, we are starting a campaign to honor the 10-year anniversary of the undergraduate program in the School of Public Affairs and Administration. Beginning November 9th to December 17th, our goal is to raise $10,000 for the next cohort of SPAA ambassadors, where Samantha is one of our inaugural members. Also, on December 10th, we will be celebrating in Zoom from 6 to 8, the 10-year anniversary. We are looking to bring back the original instructors, Margarita, so we expect you to be there. The first director, faculty director for the undergraduate program, and just the time to close out this year. And as the dean always says, we are a SPAA family. So we are looking for all of the alumni. Connect alumni, please contact your fellow classmates. December 10th, 6 to 8, the 10-year anniversary celebration of our undergraduate program in public and nonprofit administration. We look forward to seeing everyone there. We're family. And so let's close the year out with family. It's been a rough year, but it has to get better. That's all I'm going to say. For everyone who attended and participated, be safe, wash your hands, take care of yourself. To the panelists, please know, as the Director of Public Engagement, I will be engaging you in the spring. Have a blessed evening, everyone. Be safe.
Sharon,
Good
I
night.
have one quick thing.
Good night.
Sure.
If anyone's interested in serving on the SPAA Advisory Board or the MPA Board, I'm sorry, SPAA Advancement Board or the MPA Board, please let me know, because we're rotating some people off and we need some fresh ideas. That's it. Just reach out to me if you are.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Right.